Hey guys, Because Gaming here, welcome back to another video. Now before we get into today's video, I will say that the Path of Ascension guide is going to be scrapped because of how bad the first video looked, so that will not be happening. Instead we're going to do something that Preach did a few months ago, which was ranking every single dungeon in the World of Warcraft as it is today. So we're not doing like all the past remakes, although we will mention some of them throughout the video. So I've gone through every single dungeon. I've got recordings for all of them, and it took a long time. So I hope you guys like this video and compare. I hope some of these choices will compare to what you guys think about them. So yeah, actually this took a lot. Let me just bring up my my list. So this took a lot of work, and let's just get straight into it. So we're going to start from the very worst and work our way to the very best. So the worst dungeon of all of World of Warcraft is the Seat of the Triumvirate. There is zero good about this dungeon, like absolutely zero. The first three bosses are among the worst bosses ever created in WoW, full stop, pretty much. Especially in Mythic Plus. So like the second boss, the addition of the new flying ad or whatever was really, really annoying. The way it could stun you and silence you for a really, really long time. It just wasn't that fun to play through. As well as the third boss, although the third boss wasn't that big of a deal if you weren't in Mythic Plus. Like in Mythic Plus, it was not a forgiving boss at all because of the shield and the fear and the circle slowly shrinking as you're fighting him. Just wasn't fun. And then obviously the whole place is just a complete mess. The little ads that spawn and keep you in combat was just really annoying and not very fun for me whatsoever. So that is the worst dungeon. The next dungeon, I know you guys are gonna hate me for this. The second one I've got is the Spires of Ascension. I don't know why people like Spires of Ascension. I mean, everything about it is really, really bad, apart from its look. Like it looks really, really cool. I mean, it feels like you're fighting in a city of heaven, which to me is a really, really cool theme to have in a dungeon. It kind of reminds me of Halls of Valor. As for the rest of the dungeon, the second boss pre-nerf was just one of the worst bosses because you could easily get like chain hit by those missiles that spawn from those orbs. Excuse me. That was pre-nerf, obviously. Right now it's not too bad, but it's still a pretty bad boss. As well as Devos, the last boss. Lore-wise, it's pretty disappointing that she's even in this dungeon because there's so much other things they could do with Devos. They just decided to end her story here. And while I've got it on screen here, the air quotes taxi ride was, I mean, it has its problems. Like the way the Kyrian grabs your character and a different body part just looks really off-putting and weird. Next boss is going to be the first BFA dungeon, a Tal Desire. Again, a lot of people are going to be mad that I've put a Tal Desire this low in the list, but it mainly revolves around the second boss, or mainly the second boss, which was Volcal. So if you don't know, this was one of the first dungeons where the tanks actually had to do DPS mechanics. So like on Volcal, the tanks had to interrupt whatever the cast was, otherwise it would just do a whole bunch of damage to the entire group unless you had like a monk or a paladin who could dispel it. And just those totems in general. I mean, there are obviously other tank mechanics that they have to do, but those totems are just so freaking bad. Mainly because I was a Demonology Warlock at the time, and if you don't know how that worked, is that the totems have to be killed all at the same time, otherwise the boss will never stop healing, basically. And the way it worked as a Demonology Warlock is that all your damage would revolve around your pets, like that your pets would do a lot of your damage. But the problem is that you can't really tell your pets to stop in case if like some of the other DPS are lagging behind, you need to stop and wait for them to catch up. You can right click off some of the demons, but all of your imps you can't really dismiss without doing damage, which is how it worked, like the implosion ability. So Volcarl a pile of shit. Yasma a pile of shit as well. All the spiders just made it really obnoxious to try and avoid. And some of the pathings that would take that could like randomly cut you off for no apparent reason. So, and Yasma on Tyrannical was a real bitch. So that's why Tal Desire is down on the list for me. The next two I'm going to bundle as a pair because they somewhat relate. So the first one is the old Hillsborough Foothills, or Escape from Durnhold Keep, mainly because you're just riding back and forth over a very long distance. And same with the Culling of Stratholme. I mean, yeah, you're not riding, but you're just running from point A to B, point A to B, A to B. It just gets really fucking annoying. Just to kill trash. Although the theme of this, like, you know, the whole city is eaten plagued green or something, and then turned into zombies, which is really cool. I mean, you could just mow them down with like barrage or something. I mean, not back then. Barrage didn't exist back then, but yeah, the whole idea of it was cool. And then the area that was burnt up, that's the sort of thing that happens in the current version of Stratholme, like the low level classic version, which is really cool. And then the other really cool thing is the timed challenge that went on for this dungeon, where you had to kill the Infinite Corruptor, which was basically right before the last boss. You had to kill the Infinite Corruptor to have a chance to get the Bronze Drake, which at the time was a really sought after mount, so a lot of people tried to do it, and it obviously got easier as most challenges do with more gear, so you can kill the ads quicker, so the RP can go quicker. So yeah, it was really, really cool. And I think by the end of the expansion, by the end of Wrath of the Lich King, I don't think anybody ever failed on it, or if they did, it means they just don't care about it, which is fair. And the whole like following Arthas around before he became Lich King, it felt really weird because I'm not one that ever used to like the Lich King at all. I mean, certainly there are other better WoW villains in the WoW universe, but it was an okay dungeon. It is all the Caverns of Time dungeon that would disguise you as a human. For those of you who aren't a human, like if you're a dwarf, or actually sometimes they would disguise you as a dwarf, which I thought was really weird. Same thing with all the other Caverns of Time dungeons. It just felt really weird. Felt really out of place. Next one is Everbloom. So this is going to be the first Warlords of Draenor dungeon. And this is where I have one main problem about dungeons. Like, if this dungeon has this problem in it, it is going to be very low on the list. And that problem is having skippable trash and bosses, believe it or not. So back in Warlords of Draenor, you could skip Witherbark, the Ancient Protectors, and whatever that spider boss's name is. Actually, I've got it on screen here. Zeritak. I mean, we'll talk about the spider boss in a second, but it just feels really weird how you can skip trashes and bosses and it can still count for like whatever your objectives are for the dungeon. It just shouldn't be there. The spider boss on its own is really, really bad. I'm glad that boss is skippable, excuse me, because it just takes so long for the boss to actually be attackable, because she's a spider and she hangs on a web and makes ad spawn. I mean, seriously? This is a spider boss, for fuck's sake. I don't know, I just don't like this dungeon. And of course some of the trash in the Archmage area, or where you fight the Archmage soul, some of its mechanics were a bit annoying, as well as some of the vile environmental effects. were really annoying with all the flowers putting you to sleep and disorienting you and stuff like that. That was that got really frustrating very quickly. But going through the portal to Stormwind to fighting the last boss in Stormwind was a really cool idea, and you could get a nice view of the Stormwind City. If you're Horde, it might look quite cool, but if you're Alliance, it might look a bit meh. Next one is Violet Hole. Now this was the worst dungeon on Preacher's list. Spoiler alert! If you haven't watched that video, I'd recommend you go watch it. I've watched it at least a couple of times. It's pretty good, and it's interesting to hear the stuff that he has to say. Regarding the bosses in Violet Hole, they didn't really have that much going for it, apart from Icheron. I don't know. It's the big water elemental dude that's sitting in the sewers. You know, he comes out. He's somewhat immune to damage, but you have to break his shield by like hitting him pretty much, and then these water elementals spawn, and then you have to kill those to lower his health. Very much like Unbound Abomination and the Underrot, similar how that worked, which is quite cool. But the rest of the dungeon was just bleh. It's just not for me, sadly. The next one is going to be Motherlode. So this dungeon shares the same problem with Everbloom in regards to skippable trash and bosses, and it also shares the same problem as one of the other dungeons, Seed of the Triumvirate, where you could very easily pull multiple packs at once with like one clumsy hunter or one clumsy pull, whatever, and it will just completely ruin your day. Or back then, it will completely ruin your key, depending on what Mythic Plus affixes were up. So things like Sanguine, Quaking, Bursting was just a complete nightmare to play through. And it's just, overall, it's just not a good dungeon. I just do not like it. The last boss had a cool idea of like spawning these pillars, and you have to get him to drill smash the little pillars or studs in the ground. I don't know. It was a cool idea. It just lasted way too long. It was a pretty bad Grievous boss. If any of you remember Grievous, how it used to work, now it's not so bad. I mean, obviously it's a lot better. Yeah, and the first boss, punting the balls into him and making him take more damage. That was a really fun thing for a first boss. So I thought that was really good. Next dungeon even is the Alcatraz. Do not have good memories of the Alcatraz, I'm gonna be honest, because there was this one time, I think this was in Time Walking, mind you, there was this one time where I was tanking, and one of the mobs would just randomly one-shot me through all my defensives, well, Puff and Bubble, obviously. But something like that, it just feels really embarrassing. Like, and I don't know if that's because there's some other mechanic that I didn't know about, or if that's just how it was, but it just didn't play very well. And the last boss just takes so long to spawn. Just having to open up 4 other cells, which doesn't include Millhouse Matterstorm, which was really, really cool. I actually didn't know that that's how he started up anyway. Next dungeon is Maradon. Don't really have much to say about Maradon. It's just not my kind of dungeon. It just doesn't look very good. It has a good variety of mobs, but it just doesn't play well when you're going through it, especially when you're leveling or whatever. Next dungeon. I keep saying boss, but it's really a dungeon. Tal Desire. Overall, terrible dungeon. I know this dungeon should be lower on the list, but I didn't want to have too many Battle for Azeroth dungeons so far down. The reason why this one sucks so much is because of the quote-unquote wall problem. The thing's how like AoE abilities would pull 1 or even 2 packs through walls. I thought was pretty embarrassing to see, and especially with the introduction. Let me put that down. Introduction of corruptions, mainly Twilight Devastation, where it would pull shit 1 or even 2 floors down, and eventually those trash packs will just come running up and just wiping you all out, which was pretty funny, but it was pretty annoying. And I have to say, no one really wants to play around not using their AoE abilities in a Mythic Plus, because it's simply what it's all about. And as well as something I found out about the last boss, Overseer Corgus, he had more health on a plus 50, or I guess in general, he had more health than any other dungeon boss that wasn't like a straight up single target burn. So I'm talking like, what was that boss? I don't know, there was some sort of dungeon boss. So I'm excluding Volzith the Whisperer, the 2 Macagon dungeons. Where was it on the list? Total Gore. Harlan Sweet, King Desire, Avatar Sithralis, and Vitgoth, because you have to take those bosses down in very certain ways. So the next 2 are going to be back-to-back Pandaria dungeons. To be honest, Pandaria didn't have that many dungeons that were spectacular. I'm not counting the remakes, because the remakes were actually bloody awesome. Gator Setting Sun, again, just nothing too spectacular about this. Apart from the last boss, which I believe is called Rygon. The idea of you being launched onto his little weak spot, or I guess his nose or whatever, it's kind of weird, but it is also really cool when you break open the weak spot, and then you have to try and kill him while he's chasing you down. I mean, this big motherfucker's trying to chase you down. It was just so scary, but so fun to play. I really had good memories of doing this boss. Only this last boss. I mean, the rest of the dungeons suck, let's be honest. And the other one I'm pairing up is the Siege of Nizal Temple. Now, again, there's nothing too spectacular about this boss. Even the bombing run, I suppose, where you throw down manted tar traps or whatever, and then you just have to kill the ads when they have enough damage taken into their stacks. I mean, that's a cool idea, but it just took way too long. I mean, you did have the gong that could speed it up, so the ads would spawn quicker, but obviously, overall it didn't really work for me. But it did get a lot better once you start attacking the third boss, General Purplelight, is what he's referred to by this pronunciation of the last boss. Usually a good way of knowing what the pronunciation of something is usually hear an NPC say it, or something, which is going to be the problem with some of the other dungeons coming up, not in this video. But General Purplelight, the first time I saw him, I was like, what the fuck is this? I mean, this boss looked so cool. Like, I've never seen a manted with that sort of armor. I was like, where can I get this armor? This looks so cool. Even the sword fit as well, although you can actually get the sword in game, but you can't get anything else really. Just the first parts, I mean, I can see why this dungeon was the easiest to do on challenge mode, because you could use the residue globs to like give you more damage overall. I thought that was just kind of weird to play. Next one is going to be Wailing Caverns. I mean, this one shares similar problem to the other 2 dungeons, Old Hillsborough Foothills and the other dungeon, the Cullinga Strathon, where you have to run from point A to B to A to the start of the instance again, which felt really weird. This feels like a secret dungeon. So like you kill 4 bosses that are in like certain areas of the dungeon. Then you have to go all the way back to the start and talk to one of the NPCs at the start of the instance, escort him to where the last boss spawns, and then kill the last boss. That idea on its own is pretty cool. But actually playing through that was not that fun, if I'm being totally honest. I also don't get the Druids of Fangs idea, like what they're supposed to be or whatever. I don't know, maybe I'm just saying too much. Let me just scroll up the list. So the next one I've got is, oh yeah, King's Rest. So this one shares another problem with the Triumvirate, where it just felt really overtuned for the entirety of its duration. I mean, the Triumvirate existed for one patch. This dungeon existed for the whole fucking expansion. yeah, it just felt too overtuned. The first boss just really sucked in terms of its damage and the some of the mechanics they'll do, like the spit gold or something. That just did truckloads of damage, as well as the mobs on that bridge on the way to the third boss, who would do that bleed on you. That bleed would tick for thousands. It was just so scary. But you could control undead those, which was quite cool since they are undead mobs. Otherwise, the rest of the dungeon, like the dungeon itself, looked really cool. Like it does feel like you're in like a Tomb Raider sort of situation. But overall, the dungeon didn't really play as good. But it did drop a really cool mount, which I still don't have. By the way, I need to go get it. It's the, what is it, the Tomb Stalker or something, or the mummified raptor skull or something. Yeah, this is not a very good dungeon at all. Next one is Forge of Souls. So this one, when I watched Preacher's video, I realized, oh yeah, this is one of the dungeons where it had attunements. So you had to do, if people don't know, you had to do this dungeon to access the Pit of Sauron, which is the next dungeon in line. And you had to do Pit of Sauron to do the Halls of Reflection. And these were all the 3.3 dungeons when the Icecrown Citadel got introduced. They had like these sort of dungeons on the side entrance, which was pretty cool. The dungeon itself didn't really look that spectacular, to be honest. And yeah, while I was recording, I did get a battered hilt for a random reason, which was really cool. I did the questline as well. And it was very, very cool, as well as the sword that you get at the end of it. The dungeon bosses are not too spectacular by themselves, but if you're doing the first boss for the achievement, it did really feel like you were fighting like an entire different boss, because I think you had to keep 4 of those soul fragments alive, which was really, really hard to do. But also really, really fun, as well as that boss Bronjam dropping a bag, which most bosses in WoW don't do, really. Just drop a free bag. Well, it wasn't free, but it wouldn't drop every single time you killed it. The next one I've got is Iron Docks. So the Iron Docks is just a complete mess of trash, similar to See the Triumvirate and Motherlode, where you could easily pull, I'd say easily pull several packs at once, mainly in the beginning, or like the first half. The second half wasn't that trash intensive. Boss 1, 2, and 3 were pretty fucking terrible, but the last boss was really, really cool. You got this big giant Gron sitting in the middle of a ship, and then you've got these 2 other guys that kind of make him look tougher. Which I suppose is true. I mean, you got the guy in the cannon, and then you got the guy doing all these sort of Bladestorm Ravager sort of things. It was really cool. And the 2 guys' dialogue was quite entertaining and funny. The guy Korma and Zogosh. So overall, I think this last boss was really, really cool. But overall, the dungeon was it was quite bad. So that's why it falls down over here. Halls of Stone. I don't know what to say about Halls of Stone, because again, it has skippable bosses. The first 2 bosses are skipped, which blows my mind that there were this many dungeons, especially back then, that has skippable bosses. And the ones that aren't skipped are pretty bad. The Tribunal of Ages, which is one of those like wave style fights. To be honest, wave style fights don't really work, and they never have really worked. Apart from Il'gynoth, the Emerald Nightmare version. The Emerald Nightmare version of Il'gynoth worked really, really well, even though it was a wave based fight. It just all fit together very nicely. The last boss could have been so much better. I mean, just have the ads spawn in way quicker, and then spawn them from the very beginning to the very end, and just make them combine into like really tougher mobs to fight. But I don't know, maybe I'm saying too much. We're not going to have too many more dungeons for this video, so we'll do Motion Palace. Mogshan Palace, the entire Mogshan Palace isn't that good apart from the last boss. I mean, this boss was really, really cool, and him using all of his weapons really lives up to his name, the Weapon Master of sorts. And he could be disarmed by warriors. I think monks could as well, but I can't remember. Next one is Halls of Origination. So this is the first dungeon where it had a mounted combat boss in the form of Earthrager Patar, or in other words, probably Lord Marigar's uncle or whatever. I don't know. I think everyone loves the Marigar model in dungeons just because of the Bone Storm, which was present on this boss. So it was super, super cool. And I always love mounted combat. It's not vehicle combat, but actually mounted combat. I mean, you're on a camel. Yeah, I don't really get the point of the camel. I guess maybe to dodge mechanics a little bit easier, but I don't really know. But I did like it, as well as the shadowy boss at the very end. I thought he was very cool and challenging. Next one is Trial of the Champion. So the only little bit I like about the Trial of the Champion is the lancing thing. Like, I've done the Argent tournament dailies a lot, even though it is tedious. Having practice of the lancing combat, I guess that's what we'll call it, was really, really, really fun. Once you kind of knew what to do and what you could do to make it go by quicker, that sort of stuff. And the last boss was okay. It's okay. It's not the best boss, not the worst boss. Both the second bosses weren't very good either. It's not very interesting. We'll leave it there. Well, that was quite a few dungeons we went through. I will go through all the other dungeons, and I'll have its own little list with its own sort of goods and bads for it. So hopefully those will come out in the next few weeks or so. But anyway, that's all I have for you guys. So thank you guys very much for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.